to the Teenish Podcast. So today I have my mom. Say hi, Mom.
Hi.
And her name is Caroline Douglas. And I wanted to bring my mom on to talk about whatever she wanted to really talk about, but I already knew what we were going to talk about when inviting my mom on. But Mom, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. I'm Jean's mom. This is we're going to talk about mental health. I think my son wanted me to be a part of this because he knows that I have over 20 years of service in social services, working with different populations, from the homeless, the mentally ill, disadvantaged families, veterans. I currently hold a position with one of the local hospitals. I'm a population manager with that ministry. And I am also pursuing my license as a mental health counselor. That's something I've put off because I had to raise my son.
Okay,
but now that he's ready to go into adulthood, I have time to go ahead and pursue my goal. So that's sort of what's going on with me right now.
Yeah, so this is like mental health is kind of the topic that I had in mind when I thought about inviting you.
Oh, okay.
And so today we do not have Michael, unfortunately, with us. So it's just my mom and I. But Michael will be back next week. Had to step out. But I know that mental health has like always been something like in my house that if we didn't talk about it, I was learning more about it. And of course, my mom was doing something pertaining to mental health at work. And so that kind of inspired me to be interested in mental health, interested enough to, of course, talk about it at school, do projects and stuff on it, and even go to the point to where I'm creating videos talking about mental health. And so I even got accepted to a college for psychology. So I'm keeping it as a career option and definitely eager to learn more about it. And when it comes to teens, mental health is, of course, very important. And it's something that is talked about a lot. So like your standpoint on when it comes to mental health and why it is so important to understand what mental health is as a teen. What are your thoughts on that, Mom?
Why is it important for a teen to know about mental health?
Yeah, just in general, yeah.
Well, mental health is, it's an emotion. It's a feeling that we have, and mental health should not be treated any differently than if you had a physical illness. So, I tell my clients all the time that, you look at your depression or your anxiety or your bipolar disorder or your schizophrenia, whatever mental health disorder that you may have, you should treat it as you would if you had diabetes or if you had a heart condition. It's no different. And with teens, I think it's very important. One thing that I have learned, I'm now working with young teens, and everyone wants to be what we call normal. So a lot of the mental health symptoms you may want to overlook, you may want to suppress, or, you even may go through points of denial. And that's not just being a teen. We do that as adults with mental disorders as well. But we should know our bodies, and we should know our bodies mentally and physically.
Yeah, and I actually did a video on that. I submitted that to the largest student showcase of films here in Florida, the Palm Beach Showcase of Films for Students. And the video was titled, or the PSA was titled, "Know That I Am Not Different." And we were talking and we were trying to stress to eradicate like the difference that people place on physical and mental health. And it's like, okay, well, physical health is more like it is placed higher than mental health, and we were advocating for it to be seen as and taken care of like at the same level of respect, and so that's something that you brought up with talking about that. And so we focused on depression in that video. And so like, what do you know about depression and like how it develops and then like the symptoms to look for when it comes to depression?
Okay, well, depression is very common. You know, in my opinion, I think that everyone has some level of depression. We may call it differently, different things rather. I have the blues, or I'm having a pity party. All that is those are symptoms of depression. And there's different levels of depression. To make it simple, I'll just say that you have mild depression, you have moderate depression, and you have severe depression. But there are more clinical names for the different levels, but for the purpose of this, I'll just keep it that simple. And depression is a mood disorder. Okay. You have a persistent feeling of sadness, lack of energy. It can affect you physically, where you don't have an appetite. It can affect your sleep patterns. And it can be very severe. And I think that it seems that people are starting to acknowledge how severe it could be, because we've lost so many people to suicide. You look at people like Robin Williams. I mean, he's a comedian that made people laugh every second that he was on this earth, as an adult, basically. And, when he killed himself. So depression is something that we need to take seriously. There was a lot of stigma, like negative stigma, with depression and mental illness as a whole, and I think it has a lot to do with a society. We have certain expectations of the way a person should be, the way a person should act, the way the person should socialize. A lot of times it's a cultural thing, that where those expectations may come into play. And when someone acts out of that expectation, for example, if you have a man walking down the sidewalk, your expectation is that he will continue to walk down the sidewalk until he reaches his destination.
Correct. Yeah.
You don't expect him to go out into traffic, or to come in your face, or to spit on you, or to, swear at you, or things like, anything like that. But that's what mental illness does. And that's why there's some of that stigma, you have such, the negative stigmatism behind mental health, because a lot of times people just cannot explain the behavior. So what we say is that you need to get over it. You need to snap out of it. You're acting that way because you choose to act that way. So as a society, you have to think about people who like mass shootings and terrorist acts. What do? They say that they're mentally ill. So it just gives it that negative, people just, look at it so negative. And that's, what we
and
do
even to justify the actions that they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. And then in many cases, they've been proven that they are mentally ill.
Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so like for teens in specific, when it comes to depression, what are some ways that like teens that may be going through depression, or that have feelings that they, like I said, they may be going through depression, what are signs that they can look for when it comes to that, and like the steps that they can take to make sure that it's taken care of properly?
Okay, so with depression, there's periods of isolation. You don't have as much interest in things as you used to. You may have like tons of hours of sleep, and you may have tons of hours of no sleep. Crying and not knowing why you're crying. Physically, you're walking around, you have a slow, movement, droopy eyes, making statements, negative statements like, I can't do anything right. No one likes me. No one loves me. Just having those feelings. Depression is really, it affects our thinking. So our thoughts is what help us go into that, depression, because we're thinking that no one likes us, no one loves us. I can't get anything right. I'll never be successful. I don't have the support that I need. My support group is not there the way that they need to be for me. And just, I like to refer to depression as like a cloud, when I'm working with my clients, you just have this dark cloud that's just
Over
following you around, and it's just like, oh, I can't, and it can be very severe. And sometimes people are able to do what they call snap out of it, where they're like, okay, I'm done with that. I got past that period and I can go on and,
Right.
And then sometimes there's times when we can't and we have to have some type of intervention to help us to get back stable.
Yeah, and also doing some of my research for my extended essay that I had to do for my theory of knowledge class. I found that depression, our mental health in general, has an adverse effect on our oral health. And wanting to be a dentist, that allowed me to find like a weird compare and contrast when it came to mental health of people, and then how it affects their oral health. And so depression, I found that it really distracts the mind from trying to take care of someone's oral health. And I know it's something that we really don't like say, oh, okay, well, you have,
like a person that would normally be well groomed, and then they come to school and they're disheveled, or they seem to be distracted, and they're, they may be moody, like snapping at you, or being aggressive and things like that. So those are, that all comes with depression.
Right. And yeah, I even have friends that are affected by depressions, going on different levels, like you were talking about earlier, mild depression, or even pressure that's adversely affecting them. And so as a teen, really like growing up, just growing up in the house with you, of course, I knew a lot about mental health. But like looking back, like over my middle school years, especially middle school years, like how as teens, we really weren't educated a lot about mental health and why it is such important to understand how to take care of your own mental health and how to advocate for yourself. And thank God that Duval County actually created a program called Wellness Wednesdays. And so every first Wednesday of each month, all students, elementary, middle, high school, we sit down for 35 minutes with our homeroom teacher, and we watch a video that the Duval County Mental Health Council created to teach us about mental health and focusing on different things and learning different tactics on trying to stabilize whatever may be happening, or giving us the resources to encourage us to talk to our guidance counselors, encourage us to talk to our friends. And that's just one thing that I think that that's helping when it comes to at least educating us teens about mental health. Are there any other things that you think, like for teens in general, like that what can we do to learn more about mental health?
Education is very important to me.
Right.
And a part of what I really advocate for is, what we call psychoeducation. It's imperative that just, if you want to know how to do G Suite, I'll just say that because I'm struggling right now.
I was about to say, yeah.
What you do, you're doing you're Googling things, you're doing the tutorials, you're studying it. And I think that we need to put the same type of importance and value into what we're feeling,
I understand that,
emotionally. So, what is this thing? Why is it that I can't get out of bed? Why am I, not eating? Why don't I care? Why do I think that no one likes me? What are all these negative negative thoughts that I'm having, so just, put in the energy and invest in yourself and try to figure out what is happening, because usually with depression, there's something that's triggering it. We can get into that a little bit later. So,
yeah. And, so talking about depression, are there any other like mental health illnesses that may be similar to depression, or that may stem off of depression, that's caused by depression, or?
Well, when you think of teens, like maybe your age, maybe as even younger, you have your ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is very common with kids, with children, and then you also have anxiety. I'm learning that there are a lot of children, a lot of kids your age and younger, that are experiencing anxiety. So, as parents, they may say, well, you're just being a little different, or, he or she just acting a little odd or whatever. But it comes to a point where the symptoms can become severe enough where we're like, okay, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. I'm finding that, as far as with teens and everything, that, you have like test anxiety, or you have social anxiety. Basically, there's like 6 different types of anxiety. You have your generalized anxiety, you have your social anxiety, which is also known as social phobia. You have like a panic disorder, which is kind of severe, where you can, have a panic attack because of then you have your obsessive compulsive disorder. And some people may not know it, but post-traumatic stress disorder is also considered as an anxiety. It falls in that anxiety category. So, so the most common type of anxiety among your age group would be the generalized anxiety.
Okay.
And that's sometimes, that's when you're just feeling anxious, just like there's impending doom. You don't know where it's coming from or why it's going to come, but there's something that's going to happen, So you have your generalized anxiety, and then you have your social anxiety, your social phobia. And that can be triggered by different things. What I found is that a lot of times social anxiety is being triggered by maybe a childhood trauma, or some type of past abuse, or even bullying, and just being picked at, and just being mistreated. So when you have you go into a certain setting, you start feeling that anxiety because that when you were in the gym, this is where that bad experience happened. So every time you go into a gym, you may feel that, oh my God, this is going to happen again. So you have your sweaty palms, you have the heart beating, you feel the rigidness in your muscles, and it can affect you physically. And it just like depression, anxiety has a lot to do with our thinking. Anxiety is triggered by stress. We all have stress, and just the stressful thoughts, and just the worrying, and just overthinking stuff. So
yeah, and I can see how that can happen a lot in school. Because like you said, overthinking things, impending things. So like when it comes to tests, learning in general, are waiting to see what did you get on your test grades, and then failing tests. And then so we just have stress on stress on stress. And then especially like if you're in a rigorous program, especially at high school. So our brains are not even finished developing. Yeah. So imagine all of that coursework, and then things that we have to deal with at home, work, just other things that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how do you know if you have anxiety? So let me just give some examples so that listeners can say, hey, that's what that is I'm feeling. Some of the, what I said earlier, like the impending doom, overthinking things. You just know that if you go into that restaurant, those people are going to be judging you. They're going to be judging you. They're going to think that you're stupid because you're standing to the counter and you're putting in your order. It's not very realistic things that you're saying to yourself, but you are believing it. And it's a lot of negative talks and self-thinking that triggers it. Anxiety affects us physically as well as mentally. I think I touched on that a minute ago, but a lot of times with teens, you can have it can manifest itself with stomach aches. You can, start having issues with cramping in your stomach, loose bowels, things like that, feeling nauseous. Your heart just pounding for no reason, sweaty palms, just sweating, period. And it also can cause you to, where your muscles get very tense, where you just feel like, you just have tense muscles. It's just very, just feeling uncomfortable.
Right. And as teens, I know that especially like at school, we may not feel like it's like the right environment to say, oh, well, I'm feeling this, I need some type of help, and like feeling like, I guess, scared to hear what others' responses may be. So like, what is your preferred, or like the way that you treat your patients, that you're like, whenever they're faced with whatever mental health illness that you really focus on, like counseling, medication, things like that?
Yeah. So there, when working with especially youth, the one thing that comes up constantly is coping skills. Mm-hmm. Because we basically, and that it's not just for kids, it's for adults. Like I tell my clients, we all have to learn how to cope. Dogs, cats, birds, everybody have to cope, right? When a baby come into the world, they're coping by crying, right? And so then when we get older, we learn how to be verbal, and we can point, and we can start, communicating in different ways, and sharing what we're feeling or what we're experiencing or the things that we want. So when you have a person that's facing depression and anxiety, how do they cope? They can cope. They're going to have those symptoms. And so how are they coping with those symptoms? They're coping with the symptoms, they may start using drugs. They may become promiscuous. They may start skipping school. So there's different ways that they may cope. One thing that is unfortunate, it also happens, is that you have self-injurious behavior. I'm finding that, a lot of the young, the adolescents and teens they're doing the cutting in places where no one can see, and that's their way of relieving themselves of the pain. So as far as how I would work with any client that I have that's suffering or that are experiencing those symptoms, we have to meet that person where they are. It's not a one size fit all type thing. Right.
So you have to cater to whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. And whatever they have going on.
I'm not a big believer, or not necessarily a believer, but I just don't think that there's a pill for everything.
For everything. I know. I remember.
So some of the therapeutic interventions include like cognitive behavior therapy. That's very big because you're talking about the way we're thinking. So there's different activities that you can do, different tools that you can share, and homework assignments and things like that to help retrain your thinking. Okay. Another intervention is exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is like,
I was talking about that in class one day with a classmate.
That's we're gonna name it what it is. We're gonna we're gonna face it. We're not gonna run from it. We're not gonna make it this abstract thing. We're gonna say exactly what it is, and we're gonna face it and and work from there. Another technique that has become very popular that I have used is mindfulness. Mindfulness is an evidence-based meditation where you intensely aware of this and sensing the feelings. It's sort of like a meditation, like when you may want to focus on nature and what's going on, and it kind of just changes your thinking from whatever the negative thoughts that you have, and then talk to someone. I think because we have to get it out. And that's another thing that really triggers a lot of depression and anxiety, is because we hold things in. and then we have to cope with it the way that we know how to cope with
Right.
it, So it's good to have someone to talk to. Another coping technique is writing in a journal, which goes back to what I was saying earlier, because we need to release those thoughts. I personally use a journal. I think it doesn't work for everyone. I have found that some clients are like, look, I don't have time to be writing stuff down, but they may do like the worksheets and things like that. That's something that may be more effective with them. So it's basically with the journal, it's very, it can be very therapeutic. You can come in if you're having problems with sleeping, you can get up in the middle of the night, pull your journal out, start talking about writing down what it is that's got you so worried and so concerned. And another thing that happens is that when you use a journal, you're pulling all those thoughts out of your mind and you're putting it on paper, and then it goes from being a problem and like, oh my God, how am I going to work through it? To then you go into problem solving. So you're able to come down and you write down, okay, the first thing I can do is this. The second thing I can do is that. And then you see that it's not as big of an issue as we may think it is. And one thing that's very important, especially with your peers, is that it's important that you exercise.
Right.
You have a balanced meal, a balanced diet, and you get adequate sleep, because all those things can cause you to have an imbalance and, all this neurotransmitters and, everything, and the endorphins and all that kind of stuff. So it helps balance all of that out. With you doing that.
Yeah. Of course you live with me, so you see.
Yeah, you live with me. I really push, making sure that you have a balanced diet and sleeping.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you don't mind me waking up 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym and to work out, to stay active, because we know that although I'm focusing on my body, I'm also there are secondary benefits of everything that I'm doing and the nature that I am exposed to, and living in the house with you. And so I'm like growing up and hearing like the different stories that you will come and bring home. Of course, not revealing like personal information, but like when you were working with like veterans and then like teaching me things about PTSD, like when I was in elementary school, like of course I wasn't going to learn what PTSD was in elementary school, but I knew it, and I knew like when learning about when people have like different triggers and stuff like that they weren't crazy, that it was due to something that they may have experienced within their life, like PTSD and talking about war and stuff like that. And then you transitioning over to patients that may be hospitalized due to mental health, and now focusing on seniors, and then focusing on teens. So how has like you switching from like veterans to older adults to younger adults, how has that like enlightened you or given you like more like varying perspectives when it comes to treating mental health and like learning more about it to resolve the...
Well, I started working with teens because I knew it would be somewhat of a learning curve for me, and it would be somewhat of a challenge. And it has made me have to open up the books and do research and really study things, because you can't, you guys are pretty honest, and you're not going to we can't just tell you something. Not saying that I did it with adults, but we just have to make sure. But what's important is as far as with counseling and therapy is that we have people's lives in our hands. And it's important that we build our skills and we know what we're talking about, and that we are trying our best to be effective. I think that it doesn't matter what population I work with, I come with the same approach, because my I want to, when I get in my car and when I get out of my car, I'm asking, God, let me be able to have a positive impact on someone's life. And I mean that sincerely. Let me say something, or let me, provide something, or let me find a tool or something that can help someone that want to improve their current condition. So.
Yeah, I understand that. And so this month is Black History Month, and I know that there's a large stigma when it comes to mental health and African Americans. And so have you seen any of that, or what do you know anything, like, do you know anything about the stigma when it comes to African Americans and mental health?
Well, as far as the African American culture, I think we're getting better, but as a culture, we just don't reach out to and get help. We take care of it ourselves. We take care of it, in our own families. And as far as the stigma, it's not necessarily just the Black community. Mm-hmm. It's overall. A person who has a substance abuse, a substance use disorder, has less stigma than a person who has a mental illness. Because with a mental illness, you can't really name it. You don't, because, you can, with the substance abuse, you can say, okay, the heroin is right. Why he did X, Y, and Z. With mental health, they may do X, Y, and Z, but they didn't have to do X, Y, and Z. Because they can just get over what they're going through because it's a mental illness. So I don't know if I'm explaining that good, but there's a difference there. But I think that we're getting better in the African American community as far as raising awareness and making sure that we are utilizing the resources that's in place that other communities are utilizing. So, it used to be a time where you saw, particular ethnic groups or cultures that, like suicide was more prevalent in certain cultures. And that's becoming less and less true because you're finding kids as young as 9, that's committing suicide. I mean, it's, so I think that we have to open our eyes and know that this is something that is serious. And with the children that I work with now, when they're saying that they want to die and they want to kill themselves, but what it is that they want to get out of that situation that they're in. And that's what suicide is. Suicide is that you want to be out of that pain. You don't want to feel that pain anymore. So I'm out of here. I'm just going to just exit, but a lot of times, because of the maturity level, teens may not really understand that, right. Because I work with kids as young as 6 that are suicidal, so they may not understand that, when you do it, you're done. You're not coming back, so.
Yeah, and that's something that we really don't talk about a lot, especially when it comes to school. Like, even if we're learning anything about mental health, that's kind of like a hush-hush thing. And then even at church, like even at my youth group thing, like when we started talking about suicide, it was a lot of questions like, so what happens after? Like, am I still going to be loved by God, or like what? And so like it's a very touchy subject, because like even people that have relatives or friends, family, loved ones that have committed suicide, how painful it is to those that are left behind.
Yeah. There was a time when I really didn't understand, the mindset of like a person that's, that's suicidal or who tries to commit suicide, like, that's so selfish. What about the people that you leave behind and all the, they don't have their closure and blah, blah, blah. But a person that is suicidal, they are not thinking about that.
Right.
That's why you could have a person that can have their children right there in the house with them, and they can go into another room and commit suicide. And you say, we're on the outside looking in, like, how selfish, how could you do that? Because you're in so much pain and you don't know how to cope with that pain. So the way that you're choosing to cope is you're out of here. You're going to commit suicide. So it's important that we are aware of some of the warning signs, because I'm quite sure that many people that are listening, I've had a friend to commit suicide, and you just don't know what the warning signs are. Some of the things is that when you see that there's a person may give away something that they really value, they start giving away their Rolex watches and
right.
And things like that. You're like, whoa, wait a minute, that's very unusual. So we need to make sure that we are paying attention, to our friends, that are, when they're, you guys are in school and they're making certain statements like, what, I think that I'm, the world would be better if I'm not in it. What I wanted to also say is that we all go through things in life, and we have things that give us worry and concern. And when you find yourself just sitting there and you're ruminating over things and you're worrying about certain things and you're thinking about the what if, just ask yourself, would this even matter a year from now? Right? And if you can answer that with a clear head, and and then hopefully it'll make you take a step back and say, wait a minute, let me pull in some resources, let me utilize some tools that I know, so that I can snap out of this. You have the suicide prevention hotline. It's a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline. That number is 1-800-273-8255. I have clients that have called there and utilized that service. And then they also have a chat line where you can do an online chat where you can talk with someone online about what's going on. And your eyes are younger than mine.
Oh, yeah. So for the online chat for suicide prevention, it is suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat/. Once again, that is suicidepreventionlifeline.org/chat. And so today I brought my mom on to talk about mental health. I knew that my mom had a lot of great things to say because on and off the camera, it's always great conversations pertaining to mental health, because it's something that I'm very interested in, and it's something that she's not only interested in, but something that she is pursuing and learning more and more each and every day, and something that she's applying the things that she's learned in school and learned on the field to the actual lives of people of our community. And it's great to know that my mom is making a difference while I'm just at school learning each and every day. So thank you, Mom. Happy birthday. She just had her...
You're not telling my age.
No, I'm not saying your age. I just said you just had your birthday last week.
I trained you well. You don't have to tell my age.
Yeah. Yeah, so happy birthday, and thank you, Mom, for all that you do, not only for me, but for everybody that you serve and the people that work under you, and the lives that you touch, because I know that you've touched many lives in our society.
You, all right.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
And so I thank you all for listening. If you would like to contact the Teenish Podcast, Michael and I, you can contact us at the Teenish Podcast. The host at theteenagepodcast.com. You can also contact us on Instagram, Facebook, and then you can also talk to us, like I said, via email. So next week, Michael will be back. Unfortunately, he was unable to be here today, but we'll see you all next week.